welcome to the latest edition of Tea Time with Alan and Pete. And I'm sat here with Alan, and he's feeling a little bit of cold at the moment.
Yeah, I'm afraid my windows are being replaced, and so they're wide open and fully painted. And that means if you hear any work going on outside, I do apologize, but at least it's cold.
Excellent. So anyway, today I thought we would do something slightly differently. And Alan and I haven't discussed what we're going to do yet. So
okay,
Alan, you'll have to run with this. What I thought would be interesting is to pick a product and present it to you, show you what it is without any preparation, and just get you to talk about it. Now, this is not to try and catch you out. It's just kind of a bit of education for me and for our readers and watchers, and see how you get on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, keep going. I'm perfectly happy doing that now. So, yeah, okay. All right, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm good. Yeah.
I have a box in front of me.
Good.
And
great. It's brilliant. What is it?
This is it's an IsoTek product, and it's the EVO3 Initium.
Okay, it's the EVO3, what? EVO3, say again?
Initium.
Initium. Ah, that's the entry level for IsoTek power cords, if I remember rightly. So it should be pale green.
Yes.
Minty green color. I cheated this, all the minty. Yay, minty green. Yeah, that's I can't remember much about that, except that it's pretty good and it's not that expensive. It's usually used with as connecting up with the lower end of the entry level end of IsoTek's products, used mainly between the conditioner and the relevant products. I think it's also used a little bit up to the conditioner, but I think it's mostly from conditioner to product.
Okay. And really, I mean, the purpose of this isn't to quiz you on the product itself.
No,
but
okay.
I think what what I really wanted to talk about at this particular time, I'm just trying to get the product out of its packaging.
Sure. It had two little Velcro strips, if I remember rightly, that you need to remove. Well, you won't remove them. You can just, there you go. Fantastic. Yeah. So,
so what I wanted to talk about really is so on a lot of power cords and power conditioning cords and things, you get this on the end.
Yeah, an IEC socket.
Yeah. So do you want to tell us a bit about this and what it does and the purpose of it?
Okay. Well, put simply, the IEC is there to make sure that you don't have what's known as a captive mains lead, or captive power lead, which is a wire hanging out the back of your amplifier, CD player, whatever. Generally, in some smaller devices, there's no problems with having a captive mains lead. It's used on, I've got an old Blu-ray player that Sony did, which is very low cost, and it has one. The reason companies don't tend to like them is if you have a catastrophic shelf accident and the thing falls off the shelf but is plugged in, there is a possibility that it can actually break free, which means on the one hand your product is immediately dead, but on the other hand you could have a live cable with just bare wires waiting for someone to either touch it and die or it to start a fire. So you put a break between these, and there's about 3 or 4 different connectors, that I know of, very popular. One's a 2-pin, like a sort of figure of 8 lead, which I think is often called things like a telefunken, and that's the kind of thing that you might find in a lower cost product, or maybe in a computer product, or even in so I'm told, a shaver. You might also find there's a 3-pin version of that looks as like a figure of 8 with a little wobble on top, which is often used in some computer power supplies. The reason it has the 3 connectors is you have a live, a neutral, and an earth. Obviously, in some products, such as a light, for example, but also something like a Blu-ray player, it'll just have a live and neutral. It won't have an earth socket there. It isn't deemed to be important. Once you get up to sort of high-end levels, then you have one. Now, then you have an IEC socket, which is designed to be a one-way plug device. It has 3 pins in it, but it also has like chamfers on the top, so you can't just plug the thing in straight one way. There is also a slightly bigger one that's used with larger devices, larger power devices, which is a 16 or 20 amp connector, which has larger pins. It's a physically larger connector. It doesn't have the chamfers off the side. It sort of looks like a solid block, and all the pins are facing in the same direction. Whereas in this one, I think one's up facing, and that's used with big power amps and all of IsoTek's power conditioners, along with most other companies' power conditioners. So that's the plug part completely done. One other thing that some people might do is that might have might float. So, for example, I think Name use a socket that has some movement in it, deliberately so that it's not a kind of rigid connection, so that allows a certain degree of motion to it, and that generally sounds better. I mean, certainly Name like it enough to use it in their connectors.
Okay, perfect. And then in terms of power cords, for example, as you know, this is kind of what we're talking about. Why would somebody need to buy a power cord from a company like IsoTek, Ross Andrews, any of the other companies that make them with essentially with EMI rejection and RFI and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of common misconception that you've got miles and miles of wire between the power station and your wall. So why would the last couple of feet make a difference? It's a misconception for a number of reasons. Firstly, that actually it's not the whole way from the power station to your wall. There's a whole bunch of transformers that come into the play right up to the past what's called the company head, which is the bit that you don't touch that has a meter on in your house, and then into what's called the commercial unit, which is in old terms as the fuse box, and what's known as an RCD breaker unit. That from there onwards, that's quite an influential part. Now, what we've also got is what you're hearing, and when you're hearing that, you're hearing your local mains. So you're hearing everything that, this computer in one room and a refrigerator in another, and they're all on the same mains. They may not be on the same spur or ring, but they are all contributing. However, there's another side to this where you've got a very local set of products. So you might have a CD player, an amplifier, a streamer, a record player, a tuner, a power amplifier, all in the same point, going into pretty much the same one or maybe two power sources, maybe even into the same power conditioner and then into or distribution block and then into a single plug. Now, all of those are kind of contributing to one another. So it's not necessarily that the power station 20 miles away is creating electromagnetic interference, which is then messing up your delicate amplifier. It's more that your delicate amplifier is having some electromagnetic and radio frequency interference from the CD player that sits next to it, or the streamer that sits next to it, or the tuner that sits next to it in that frame. So if we try and create a kind of bulwark between each device so that that is minimized, and one of the best ways of doing that is with power cords and then into power conditioners and certain different parts of that. Yes, there are products where sometimes you need to do a more aggressive thing. You might need to put a filter on, say, a refrigerator that's making an awful lot of noise. And that is quite a key issue. And another one, obviously, I've said this before and I'll keep saying it, is things like power supplies for phones, phone chargers. Those can be incredibly noisy. If you put one of those on the end of your distribution block with your audio system, you're on a hiding to nothing. But the power cords are struggling or are trying to minimize the influence of that, plus all the other devices there. So it's kind of trying to make sure all your ducks are in a row in your system.
Excellent. That's great. Thank you for that. And then, of course, sort of one step after the conditioned power cords are power conditioners themselves, and there's a whole host of options to choose from, and often they will make some of the biggest differences in your house, won't they?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, one of the problems is that we are still, all audio systems are playing the mains, the AC, and the better they can work to play that with as little interference coming into that as possible, and that is that local interference. As I said, up to a point, it's the hundreds of miles of cable coming into your house, but it's from that point of that RCD consumer unit. From that point on in, things in there are influencing your local juice, and that can do things like that. Can either add some ground plane noise on that, or it can even do things like DC offset, where if you look at a main signal, it should be a perfect sine wave. At times it's not, because of stuff, which means if you can get some of that back to normal, the system will sound better. So what you're trying to do is trying to make the juice as blameless as possible. Now, that can be everything from a power conditioner that essentially acts as a big filter, to making it something that's a complete regenerator that makes that rebuilds a voltage exactly.
Okay, here's a thought, and feel free to shoot me down.
I'll get my gun.
So would a system run on solar power that's generated within the house potentially benefit from the fact that it's coming straight from the roof?
Good point, well made. And the answer is I don't know, because usually they don't generate quite enough, because they often tend not to generate quite enough to put in there, especially as we listen a lot at night, and solar power doesn't do quite as well under the cover of darkness. But
still the solar power,
yeah, I mean, it could be the same thing if you had a wind farm outside. Yeah, theoretically, I mean, what we're trying to do is prevent the world around us from getting in the way. In a way, thinking about it, just because you put that one out there, in a way, wind or solar power, if you had a local wind or solar farm, a power conditioner would probably be even more important, because you would get greater variation potentially from, it's not as windy as it was yesterday, so it's 222 volts instead of 246 or whatever. So you're trying to get that sort of balance. So yeah, I mean, theoretically, I imagine it would be more important. Practically, we won't know for a few years. So,
well, certainly,
yeah, but it's a good question.
Yeah, maybe we have to refer to some of our friends that live in warmer climes.
Yeah, or in the future. Well, future people, come back. People from 2030, please answer.
Yes, quite. Good. Okay, well, I think that probably wraps up this discussion.
Oh no, the important thing is it's green, and red goes faster. Green is greenier. I think that's the big question. That's the big point. That makes a big difference.
It does, absolutely. So it's all about the color.
Yeah.
I think okay, well, that's a good point to end on, and we'll chat next time. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Bye.